Yep.
You mentioned in a recent info line, and you mentioned it again today, that despite being a glass half full kind of gal, I too, as you know, am a glass half full
You're
kind of gal.
very much. Yeah.
This whole pandemic has really tested how much we've got in the tank, right? I mean, it's hard to come back week after week when we see what's happening to some of our colleagues, particularly on the provider side, and everything they're experiencing. They're really being pushed to the brink, and I think a lot of people understandably are, evaluating their retirement timelines. A lot of people are evaluating whether or not this is a career that they want to continue to be a part of. And I just hope that things settle down enough so that we don't lose more really, really good professionals. But I've heard a number of people say, and you alluded to this as well, this nurse to patient ratio is just not sustainable that we've been experiencing. So things have got to get
another
better.
thing that we heard that just recently is it's interesting to start reading about the traveling nurse price tag.
Oh my God.
And how our hospitals there's no money for that.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the provider relief funds, that they release some more funds so that hospitals can, we can ask our state who gives us money.
Right.
I really appreciated finally hearing CFOs say, we have no way to cover this.
Right.
And the industry to start saying, and what are we going to do about that?
Sure.
That's a huge price tag that nobody's covering.
It really is. It really is. Dave, let me ask you a couple questions as a small business owner. What adjustments have you had to make in order to continue to be of service to your clients and to the healthcare community? What have been some things that you've had to adjust and make some changes with as to run your business?
Probably the easiest answer to that is to realize that we are all remote. I laughingly refer to myself as the Zoom queen. And really that's okay. We had to learn to be flexible. We already had our employees working remotely anyway. So that but it was time to start doing outreach. I started reaching out to all the HFMA during the first of COVID when we were all just devastated. How can I educate? How could I find people to help teach the stuff that we desperately, like how do you code ICD-10 for COVID? I mean, those were basic questions. But the company, because we have that kind of flex, I could put together training, gather up people who I know were just so talented. They volunteered. We all did it at no cost. And we just became trainers because that's what we desperately needed. And we put it together in record-breaking speed.
Yeah.
And many chapters, many regions of HFMA were like, can you help us with that? So massive flexibility. I also, since my staff were already remote, but I know that the hospitals have really struggled with being okay with remote staff. And every time I teach, they ask me about that because I had employees for many years. How would I feel about it? I really think technology has been our gift.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that if you can make that work, you've added value to your staff.
For sure.
I had somebody say to me in one of our things that she doesn't have to drive an hour one way now. So she just picked up 2 hours. She could be home with her family. If that doesn't have value, but every small business, whether you're, especially in healthcare, of course, but we've all had to learn how to be so flexible. So our employees will still value and we still get the productivity we need. And I think high healthcare can lead the parade on that one. We have done so well in most of our settings, and more productive and more satisfaction and less turnover. I mean, hallelujah, right? That's a win on all fronts.
Yeah. So you can really relate to a school teacher who has had to pivot through this for a while anyway, in some communities, remote learning versus teaching in the classroom, especially when you're used to having 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds in your class, and now all of a sudden they've got to see you on the Zoom. I mean, it's challenging.
I'm telling you, they had a harder life than I did. I mean, I have adults. I can say, okay, when you're going to engage with me, you got an 8-year-old, like, I'd rather watch cartoons. I'd rather do something fun than this. Yeah. My heart goes out to those teachers. Wow, they had their hands full.
One thing I would add to this topic is I think about, that informal water cooler conversation, or, hey, let me stop into your office and while we're having a cup of coffee, or at the end of the day, or over lunch, or whatever. And I think when you, as a leader, have everybody in your department maybe on one call, there are certain things of a personal nature that aren't going to come up. Judy's not going to necessarily, with 30 people on the phone, say, oh, I'm having a really tough week with my mother. She's taken ill or whatever. And I think I think it's important for leaders to still try to do their best to reach out one-on-one with some of their staff as well, to say, hey, you know, great call today. I appreciate your input, but I sense that you were down a little bit. You know, how you doing? Tell me what's going on. Don't you agree? Don't you think it's important to stay
Yeah, Bill,
connected in that
you
regard?
hit, that is such a positive statement, because we can get all wrapped up in the business of business and forget the business is really that person at home now that we don't see anymore. I really like some of the ideas I've seen, again, because I have the privilege to be at a lot of HFMA meetings and teach, but I'm a good student. And I love hearing, like, we're going to do 2 days at home and 3 days in the office, and they're sharing space so they could cut down on that overhead.
Yeah.
And people are trying, because they knew what you said. There are people who are going to be just outspoken all the time, not a problem. But then there's the mass majority who are highly intimidated by that. And so I've seen that kind of flex. Not that a leader shouldn't notice I'm kind of my face and so forth, but they've acknowledged that they need to do more of face-to-face, if not all the time. So the employees have the opportunity to do their hours and flex.
Right.
I had an employee tell me that she said, I haven't worked during the day for about a week now because my child is sick. So now I just work at night. So she's still able to work, where before she'd just been home.
Right.
Now she says, I can work at night day and the work is still done. And I thought that's a win.
Yeah.
Because we certainly have issues with sick children.
Oh, for sure, for sure. You mentioned that you've hosted some boot camps and some HFMA meetings. I think I think Nebraska, Iowa, at least there are probably some others. I think you attended the Western Symposium. Talk about some of the topics that providers have, some of their concerns right now, some of the things that you discussed and that you were hearing.
Yeah, Bill, I had the privilege to teach this class. We have not just payers going wild, that one's pretty crazy. But the second one we just started this last week actually is top audit and denial challenges and strategies for success. I can tell you that class is kind of like listening to the world you live in and say, wow, what are they all doing? Two of the biggest topics, and one of them is brand new in the fact that it's just starting to spread across the country. That's what I mean by brand new. The site of service referrals is now a nationwide problem. The hospitals enter into contracts with payers, and I've kind of said this a lot recently. What is the win for the provider? The win for the payer is a reduction of bill charges. What's the win for the provider? It can't be win-lose all the time. So what's your win, provider? It used to be directing patients to us. That they have contract with everybody. So they're not directing anybody to you. So what's your win? Yeah. Now we're seeing site of service referrals, which means that instead of saying Day wants to go to her local hospital for an MRI, they'll approve my MRI, but they're sending me to the freestanding imaging center because it's better quality. And I called them on it and I said, there's an MRI is an MRI, dudes. What quality? It was pricing. I said, you mean you got a cheaper contract with them?
Yeah, they'll pay less for the service.
So hospitals, you have got to figure out why you're contracted. What's your win? These site of service referrals are deadly because they're taking your imaging money. How about your ambulatory surgery? They're shipping them all to, and United even said they were going to do that. We will not be bringing a patient to a hospital for ambulatory surgery unless they have all these complications, which of course is your high cost patients. So that's huge. Site of service. Hospitals, why did you contract? Figure it out rapidly because they're not sending you business. You're getting the sick inpatients, $1.50. You're getting the sick patients who take all your resources, but the ones where we make our money, shipping out to your competition. Mm-hmm. The second one, Bill, that's the fastest growing and the most alarming are called, I call them line item audits. Some people call them forensic audits, which once again, what does that mean? A line item audit where the payer has determined they are going to start auditing every line on the itemized bill against the order. And they have two big hotspots, the definition of routine nursing. Mm-hmm. We are seeing this all over the country, but big time we're going to be speaking on it in Mid-South HFMA next week. I've got 3 great faculty who are joining me, and they're telling their story. And I have one speaker who has great information about these line items. I've helped some hospitals just recently, and what we're seeing is that nursing service, routine nursing, they're disallowing any charge that a nurse does, anything. The second one is supply. Like if you're thinking about, I want you to take you to ICU with me. An ICU patient is on a ventilator. Their perception is that nursing service covers, that room and board rate covers everything you'll ever do in that bed. That's horrific. So when I say things like, well, there was a physician order that was specific to the patient, there was a cost that was specific to the patient, therefore there's a CPT code specific charge to the patient. That's the only way there's a separate charge. And it's like, no, everything that nurse does is covered by room and board, including ventilator management in ICU. The next thing is, of course, supplies. And it's non-routine versus routine. There's some words they don't even use that we use. So we're not just, these are heavy duty. If you have percentage of billed charges, you're going to get audited, and be careful, you're going to lose a ton. The second thing is, if you're an outlier, if you have a DRG payment and an outlier, you'll get audited. And critical access hospitals, you get a percentage of billed charges still.
Mhm.
You're getting audited when you have a $3,500 bill, you're getting audited and they take back 600 of it. So it isn't necessarily big hospitals, it's anybody.
Yeah.
And this is huge. This is the biggest issue coming up because we have nothing to fight back with other than there is an order unique to the patient, then there's a charge. Otherwise, the room and board rates like $5,000, everybody gets charged everything,
Right.
including observation, nothing in observation either. And one of the disallowed is a nurse helping a physician with a procedure. Covered in routine nurses. So that line item audit is, we're having pockets of it in the country right now, the Southwest, the East, and now the Northwest. But the center of the country has not been hit yet. Why am I telling you this? Do you think you won't be?
Right.
But our problem is we have to find a way to figure out how to protect ourselves in our contracts or be ready to sever. Because this
So the
is
solution
huge.
or the defense for the providers is still kind of evolving as far as the best way to fight these denials or these reductions in reimbursement. They're still working on it.
They're going to need to look at defining routine nursing. Number one, it's never 24 hours of nursing, and it's not every single, and then the second thing is look at your contracts. Where in the world did it say they could do this?
Mhm.
But they're all doing it. And it's
Yep.
on your big ticket items and on anybody who has a percentage of bill charges.
Yeah.
It's
Did,
tough. Those are the two big ones, and they're
Sure.
deadly.
Another topic, did folks bring up any concerns around surprise billing? And
Actually, we talked about it a little bit, the two HFMA meetings in Nebraska and Iowa that you just talked about. We did our fun revenue cycle boot camps with them. I asked their faculty, again, I'm loving to gather up people who are living this. They thought they're really dealing with the specialty physicians who they have to give an estimate of charges to the patient. They're finding they have much more because of these physicians, again, critical access hospitals are having a lot more of those than they thought they were going to have, being out of network.
Yep.
So hospitals, here's my heads up. You have employed providers, but remember you also, surprise bill impacts everything you refer out. Like my path sample, right? Went out to I had no idea where it went. And I got a bill from a provider 3 hours away who told me I was out of network. And I said, I never saw you. Well, when I had my endo, they took a polyp and they shipped it out. And I went, I'm getting a surprise bill. This is it right here. And I had no problem telling them that I didn't approve it to go to you. But the healthcare providers, we do a lot of that. Like you call in to consult. When I was in the ER, they called in a consult, the neuro. How did I know that neuro was in my network? Surprise bills. So I have in my class on, let me see, both of the classes, the Payers Still Going Wild, the top audits, I have included some new slides. I think they just got posted on surprise bills and how we actually have a win here, Bill, it's a big one. CMS came out in July and told us that if a patient has already been discharged and already had their bill, and then a payer comes back and does an audit and then takes money back, and then we end up billing them a new balance, You're not allowed to do that. That would be a surprise bill to the patient. So Medicare came out in July of last year and said that would be in violation of the Surprise Bill Act. That's a big win for us with all this post-discharge nonsense that's going on.
Absolutely.
So I always encourage people, get your attorneys involved, get some letters drafted. And the first time it happens, pump the letter to the payer going, you're in violation of the Surprise Bills Act, and don't send records. Don't let them take back your money. Put them on notice immediately that you'll turn them in. And those are just things we don't want to have happen, but it's happening a lot.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And I think in those
that's a win for the
situations,
provider.
I think in those situations, a lot of time information is power. You know, the more
Yeah.
that you and your staff are prepared and sort of know the ins and outs, the more you can respond and react to them intelligently, where the payer says, oh, I'm dealing with somebody that knows what they're doing. And
I think that's our challenge, Bill. Every day of the week, we have to put and I lovingly say, put on your A game, but it means that we have a lot of really good people who aren't really trained very well in all of this.
right.
And we have turnover. I get that, but you know, we have to have leadership, and leadership says, get this done, and then tell your employees, here's the basics. You know, here's what it is. If this happens, alert me as your director immediately. Just alert me for now.
Right.
Let's just get this going, because a change of a process workflow may take a little bit of time, but we
Sure.
will just, we got to put them on notice. No.
Sure. Yeah.